Works 365, and today I'm gonna make a video. There's quite a few of these on YouTube, but I thought I'd do my own and show you how I fuse artillery shells in series in a rack. This is a way that has produced no absence of pass fire. It's always gone off for me. It's been really dependable, so I thought I would show you how I do it. All right, so the tools you will need: tape, fuse cutter, fuse, a rack, and shells. These are the double break artillery shells from Warrior. If you're interested in the demo, that will be included in the link in the description below. But we're not going to be lighting these off in this video, so we can focus on the actual fusing part. So, a couple things about these tools here. This is called Dave's Magic Tape. That's the nickname for it anyway. It's just packing tape from U-Haul. You can get it anywhere. I get it three for, I don't know, 10 bucks on Amazon. It's really good stuff. You can rip it with your fingers. It sticks really, really well, but not so well where it's a pain in the ass. These are fuse cutters. I got these from Pyro, I believe, or canonfuse.com, I'm not sure which, but basically what this is here, if you want to come a little closer, it's an anvil. So instead of metal on metal, like scissors, there's no possibility of it creating a spark, which could cause pre-detonation, which could cause face melting. So these are good. They're a little pricey, and if you don't have something like this, I would suggest maybe nail clippers or something. I would not suggest scissors or anything where it has like two blades that kind of come together, create friction. And then the fuse. You need some fuse. You can get these different rolls of fuse a lot of different places. I use canonfuse.com, which is actually the manufacturer of this particular fuse here, or you can go to Pyro or any place that sells mortar tubes. And it's a little bit about this particular fuse here. Let's see here. This is called Fast Cake Fuse. So the reason that I like this particular fuse for artillery is it creates just enough delay between each shot, depending on how you fuse it, that one effect does not overlap the previous effect. So for the bulk of your show, when it's just you're making basically a giant cake using shells, this is the best fuse I've found. So the timing, you can see right there, it's 12.5 to 13.6 seconds per foot. So what it is, it's a little bit slower than perfect fuse, which is the pink fuse a lot of people use. So yeah, just a little tip there, but feel free to use whatever fuse you like. This is actually just some fuse I had left over. I didn't pre-cut this, so it's not going to be the perfect length, but we'll get into that in a minute. All right, so the first thing you're going to want to do is with your rack here, and I apologize, we have 5 of these instead of 6. You're going to want to drop each artillery shell in there and make sure that it easily goes down and doesn't stick. If it sticks or it doesn't kind of pull smoothly, I would suggest cleaning your tubes, and you can do that by using a toilet brush cleaner. All right, sorry about that. The light in the garage automatically turned off. It's motion activated, so I wasn't moving enough. All right, yeah, so you want to make sure that you have your artillery shells each put in here, and they should have kind of a long fuse sticking out of each tube if you're using the correct tube and the correct canister or ball shell for the particular tube. If they're kind of like way down here, barely sticking out, you might want to attach a leader fuse, which is just attaching a fuse on the fuse, which will give it a little bit more breathing room. All right, so after you do that, and I apologize for you guys who are a little more advanced, but I'm making this for like the average beginner. What you're gonna wanna do is you wanna just rip and place these pre-fusing to make it a little easier on yourself. I can generally get away with one piece of tape per connection. So that's what I prepare to do. Sometimes I do a little more, sometimes I do a little, well, I never do less than that, but so you do that. Just makes it easy when you're actually doing the fusing to just quickly grab the next thing. The next thing you're gonna wanna do is you're going to want to kind of get an idea of how long you need your fuse. And depending on how far back you want the person lighting it to get before it goes off, you can kind of determine that by how much fuse is here in the front, which is the part that's going to go before it actually passes fire to the first fuse in your series. So I think right about there is fine for me. So I'm going to grab the fuse cutter and I'm going to cut it right about there. Now, basically, and once you get a little closer so we can see that right here. So the way you want to fuse this is you want to fuse it in line with the fuse that it's being connected to. So the easiest place it's going to pass fire is going to be the end, the actual tip of the fuse. So as this fuse burns, it's going to burn and it's going to pass fire right here at the tip where you'd normally light it. What you do not want to do is something like that. So it would burn, and where the tip would normally light right there, there's an angle, and it may light, but it may not. And nobody likes a failed ignition. It's dangerous, and it's not so fun to watch. So you want to make sure that when you do it, you actually fuse it up like that so it hits the tip as it goes through. All right, you may see some fast forwarding here after the first fuse that I do, but it's all going to be about the same thing here. So look at like that, and you want to just go like that and wrap it around. And a lot of people use zip ties. I do sometimes, most of the time I don't, and the only reason I don't is because it creates a little more cleanup, and generally I don't feel like it's needed. But see, now what you want to see there is when the fuse comes, or when the fire comes down the fuse, it has an exposed tip to light. What you don't want to do is you don't want to have the tape covering the tip of the fuse. While this tape is going to increase the heat of the burn, it's still going to negate some ability for it to pass fire if it's actually tucked under the tape. So you want to avoid that if you can. And just like the first one, we're going to tape it right here. And I'm going really slow here, guys, so I apologize. I just want this to be really, really clear for the first person ever who's going to try to do this. I'm going to go ahead and just hit it just like that. Tuck it real close to one another, because if it doesn't, for some reason, catch it on the tip, you want to have it have a possibility of lighting further on down the tube. All right, again, the light went off. We're going to fix that for future videos. I apologize. All right, so we got two, and I'm just going to skip ahead here or fast forward and get to the end here. All right, so I got this all fused up. Now, of course, I have an extra piece of tape because for demonstration purposes, I put a piece of tape for each tube, even though we actually only had 5 of these that I was going to shoot here. So that's kind of what it's going to look like when you're done. There are other techniques that make it look real pretty and stuff like that. But for me, I don't really care about how this looks. I care about how it looks up in the sky, and this works for me. I'm not I'm not saying that this is the only way to do it correctly. I just say this is how I do it, and it works for me. So hopefully it helps some of you guys out there to put on a cool back show for your friends and your family. A couple things about the particular fusing here. So something like this, you see between the two fuses, this is going to be kind of a lead time between the two fuses lighting and the two shells breaking in the sky. So if you want a longer delay between each break or a shorter one, you can kind of adjust this, and you can tuck it right up behind, or you can pull it a little bit farther back. It's kind of up to you. You can even, if these fuses are real long, like these are very, very long, you can take the fuse cutter and you can actually trim that, and you can basically create a quicker break in the air if you only have like 1 or 2 different kind of fuses and you want to kind of manually adjust the firing order in the sky. A couple other things. A lot of people, I did this when I was younger, they would pre-fuse it like this and they would pull it out, and then they would do another one and they would pull it out, and then when it came time to fire them, they'd have all these rings of pre-fused shells, and they'd light one, and then they'd bring another and they'd drop them in with the hot smoking tubes. I would not suggest that, especially when you're doing so many shells at once, pre-fusing like this. If you do get a detonation from the tube being too hot, doing something like that, that's not going to be a good time. So I would not suggest this. I would suggest pre-fusing everything and having it a one wick situation, one fuse situation, and just kind of sitting back and watching the show. But yeah, some people, what they would do is they would, right here where it's kind of drifts off away from the leader fuse here, they would use a zip tie and zip tie it closer. And that's something you can definitely do. That will ensure maybe that if it doesn't light up here, it lights down here. But I haven't found that necessary as of yet, although I have thousands of zip ties just in case. But yeah, another thing that some people do, especially if you are going to have all this stuff kind of set out before your show, what a lot of people will do is they will cover this with like tin foil, or maybe even tape all the way across. And what they do, what they do that for is if sparks are coming down during your show and you don't want one of these fuses to be lit in kind of a pre-ignition type of deal, that'll prevent something like that. Again, that is not something that I have personally dealt with, but that is something that you can do. And basically what you would do is you just take a piece of tin foil or some tin foil tape or metal tape, aluminum tape, and you would cover this entire fuse, and then you would be able to have all your racks out before the show. And then if you're using something like an electronic system, you can hit the button and you wouldn't have to worry about the sparks coming down and lighting this stuff off prematurely. Another thing that if you have a rack with multiple rows, and I do have some of those, and you're fusing it like this or in any kind of configuration, that tape is also going to prevent jumping from fuse to fuse. So sometimes when these fuses light, it's gonna go and there's gonna be sparks that go kind of all over the damn place, especially off the actual main fuse. And those fuses, those sparks can kind of shower onto the other fuses in the rows, and that can start a pre-ignition situation, and it can also break up the firing pattern and the fusing. So you want to keep that in mind too if you're worried about that. Again, not something I really had to worry about. All right, so the last thing I wanted to mention was one other thing you can do, especially if you want a really neat fusing job. You can tape down your fuse to the actual tube or to the actual rack so it looks nicer, and it prevents, again, fuse jumping and multiple road racks. So what you can do is you can just take a little piece of tape and you can tape it down to the actual tube. I wouldn't suggest taping it in a way that will obstruct the actual hole, but if you're worried about, like if there was another row of tubes right here and you were worried about this fuse kind of falling over or leaning over and maybe lighting this next row prematurely, you can just tape it like that. And you could do that really as often as you want if you want to do it. See, if you can see, it's kind of angled towards the camera there. And if you want to just make sure, boom, that's not going anywhere, it'll also make it look nicer. So if you want to impress your friends or family or YouTube audience, you can do something like that. Yeah. And then you light that single fuse there. It goes, passes fire to the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. Obviously, if you had a first show there. So that is how I personally fuse artillery racks. And yeah, if you use my method, can't guarantee 100% success, but I've had pretty good success with it. So hope this was helpful to some of you kind of beginner pyros, and happy training.